Well, it's so good to see everyone here this morning. So glad to be here with you this morning. If we haven't met yet, my name is Billy, and I am on staff here. I'm super excited to be up here sharing God's Word with you guys today and continuing our series, Encountering with Jesus. And so we're going to jump right in as I put my glasses on, because I always forget to do that. 1968. In 1968, a scientist was tasked to develop an ultra-strong adhesive for aircraft construction. That scientist did not do it. In fact, that scientist failed miserably. That scientist invented a sort of a tacky, sticky thing, but it was nowhere near what it was supposed to be. And it was deemed useless. 1978, 10 years later. They finally, after some marketing, some experimenting, they finally give us what we dearly love and known today as Post-it notes.
Yeah.
Post-it notes, right? Like everyone loves these. These are great. In fact, Post-it notes are of the top 5 most sold items for office supplies in the entire world. It's in the top 5. This thing that was once useless in the top 5. And we all love to, have our special uses for Post-it notes and whatever. I think my personal favorite is when we use it for things like this. This is not a picture of my office yet. Yet is the key word, but it might be. I saw this and I was so inspired. But I thought, man, oh man. Well, sometimes we think that there is something that is useless only to find that it can be used in a magnificent way. And today, we're going to look at a story, a narrative, where we see just that. So if you have your Bibles, go ahead and turn with me to John chapter 6. We're going to be reading verses 1 through 15. John chapter 6, verses 1 through 15. If you don't have your Bibles, it's fine. We will have it up on the slides as we go. Here we go. After this, Jesus went away to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, which is the Sea of Tiberias, and a large crowd was following him because they saw the signs that he was doing on the sick. Jesus went up on the mountain, and there he sat down with his disciples. Now, the Passover, the feast of the Jews, was at hand. Lifting up his eyes then, and seeing that a large crowd was coming toward him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so that these people may eat?" He said this to test him, for he himself knew what he would do. Philip answered him, 200 denarii worth of bread would not be enough for each of them to get a little. One of his disciples, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, said to him, "Well, there is a boy here who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, but what are they for so many?" Jesus said, "Have the people sit down." Now there was much grass in the place, so the men sat down, about 5,000 in number. Jesus then took the loaves, and when he had given thanks, he distributed them to those who were seated. So also the fish, as much as they wanted. And when they had eaten their fill, he told his disciples, "Gather up the leftover fragments, that nothing may be lost." So they gathered them up and filled the 12 baskets with fragments from the 5 barley loaves left by those who had eaten. When the people saw the sign that he had done, they said, "This is indeed the prophet who has come into the world." Perceiving then that they were about to come and take him by force to make him king, Jesus withdrew again to the mountain by himself. What a great story. It's one of my favorites. And in fact, in honor of the story, we have a little snack for you. And the EYG students, are going to just pass around as we're studying today. Just a little snack. I hope you guys will enjoy. Please go ahead and take some. You don't have to. You won't be judged if you don't. It's fine. It might be an acquired taste, maybe. Not positive, but they'll start passing this around as we go. Now, this miracle of Jesus right here, the feeding of 5,000, is the only miracle that happens in all 4, is recorded in all 4 of the Gospels. And we find from the other Gospel that this situation happens right after Jesus hears about the death of his cousin, John the Baptist. And so Jesus hears about the death of John the Baptist, and he says, "Hey guys, you know what? Let's take a little time. Let's take a breather. Let's go to a desolate place. Maybe it's to spend some time mourning, to reflecting, maybe just to get away from as it says, to sort of get away from the crowds." And so he goes to a desolate place. And we find that in Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It doesn't actually say it here in John. But it says that they go to this desolate place. And while they're at this desolate place, a crowd of 5,000 plus people show up. Now, this is no chance gathering of people. In fact, some commentators, I found this fascinating, they think that this was a deliberate movement by people gathering people and pushing them to Jesus to make Jesus make a political move. And so it wasn't just that people were sort of randomly following, like picking up and marching along. It was actually thought that people were gathering these people and pushing them to make Jesus make a political move. And we see that actually towards the end, right? We see that in that his end thing is they try to force him. It's just sort of an interesting thing. But Jesus, it says, and I love this, he's sitting on the mountain, and this crowd, this throng of people is coming up the mountain. A crowd of people, 5,000 plus people, that are probably there for ulterior motives. And what does he do? He has compassion on the crowd. And I love that. Jesus has compassion on this crowd. In Mark and Luke, it says that he teaches the crowd. In Matthew and Luke, it says that he heals the crowd. And of course, in all four of the Gospels, and here, he feeds the crowd. Now, in verse 4 brought out the idea that said that it was mentioned that it was Passover. And this is very important, actually. I know sometimes we can like gloss over things. We're like, oh yeah, it's Passover. But it's really important for two reasons. One is that it sets up the time frame of what's going on. For the reader, as we're reading this, we go, oh, it's Passover. Oh, it makes sense that there's green grass that everyone sat down at. Oh, it's springtime, so we have a little bit of a feel. It feels about like this time, maybe a couple weeks ago. It lines up there, so it gives us a time frame. But the more important reason that John does this, and I love John. I love how he writes. I love what he does, his technical things. But the more important thing is that when he mentions Passover, it frames the entire chapter. This whole chapter 6 is framed telling us that this is happening around Passover with the goal that we understand more of who Jesus is. So we're going to look at three things. If you guys have your handouts, if you guys don't, you can open up the Encounter app and you can take notes in there. I just discovered that not too long ago and I was super excited about it. But we're going to look at three things that we learn about Jesus from this Passover, from this passage. The first one is this. The first fill-in is this. Jesus is the better Moses. Jesus is the better Moses. Now, through this miracle that we just read about, feeding the 5,000, through the next miracle in the chapter 6, where he walks out on the sea, and then through the following discussions with people. If you read this chapter all the way through, you'll see some amazing discussions that all tie in. But Jesus is hoping to unveil more of his identity. And John skillfully crafts this into his message here. I love this. This is so exciting to me. So, real quick, we're going to have a little bit of a quiz, a little bit of maybe a test, you might say. We'll talk about that later. What are two key miracles of Moses upon leaving Egypt? When you think of Moses after he's left Egypt, as you're leaving Egypt, what are two real key miracles that you think of that he did? What? Okay, Red Sea. Yeah, we see Red Sea. Red Sea was like, everyone's like, yes. I remember watching that movie with Val Kilmer's voice. It was really good. Right. So they depart in Exodus chapter 14, the departure through the sea. Okay, what's another big key one? Was that feeding? Yes, feeding the people. Manna from heaven, right? And it's 40 years of feeding people manna. It says in Exodus 16:35. Now these two miracles were really powerful symbols within Passover. Extremely. They were very well connected to Passover. And so when John mentions Passover, the readers, knowing the background of this, these things would start to perk up, right? And these symbols, one, showing the rescuing people from harm, what God did, rescuing his people from harm through the Red Sea, and then sustaining them in the desert or sustaining them in a desolate place. Jesus repeats these in John chapter 6. He repeats these miracles in John chapter 6. He, one, feeds the multitude, the 5,000 plus, where? In a desolate place. And then, right after this, we're not going to look at it, but right after this, he departs through the water. He leaves and walks across the water. And he meets his disciples. It is amazing that John says, now, there's echoes in John 6:5 and Numbers 11:13. I think we're going to have them up on the screen here. I'll just read them though. It says, lifting up his eyes then, And seeing that a large crowd was coming towards him, Jesus said to Philip, "Where are we to buy bread so these people may eat?" Numbers 11:13, Moses asks, "Where am I to get meat to give to all these people?" Now, there's an echo in here that John is referencing. Quick question. Who provided the meat for Moses? God. Yeah. It wasn't like I'm trying to trick you guys. All right, God did it. God provided the meat for Moses when he said, who is going to, where am I going to get this? So this same God in John 6 provides the bread for 5,000 plus people in this desolate place. If you're missing it, Hebrews 13, 1-3 spells it out very clearly. Therefore, holy brothers, you who share in the heavenly calling, consider Jesus the apostle and the high priest of our confession, who was faithful to him who appointed him, just as Moses also was faithful in God's house. Here, for Jesus has been counted worthy of more glory than Moses. As much more glory as the builder of a house has more honor than the house itself. John very craftily puts in here and reveals to us that Jesus is greater, is better than Moses. And this is key because Moses was like the bomb. Moses was the man. Everyone was compared to Moses. And John sets this up for us to see, for the readers to see, that Jesus is the better Moses. So amazing. Number 2, this passage reveals to us that Jesus is the bread of life. Jesus is the bread of life. This passage is talking about has hyperlinks all over it. I love it. And if you don't know what a hyperlink is, it's very simple. When you're like on a web page or you're on a document or something like that, and you see like a highlighted text, and you click on it, and it takes you to like another website or another part of the document, that's a hyperlink. The Bible is full of hyperlinks. It is an astounding piece of literature. It is, I almost want to say magical, but that might be like a bad connotation, but it is crazy how many things take you and connect all over the place. And this passage has hyperlinks in it as well. When I say the words took, gave thanks, broke, and gave, what does that make you think of? What's that? The Last Supper, right? John uses very purposefully, after saying Passover, uses the word took and the words give thanks. The other 3 passages use the words broke and gave. It's very purposeful to hyperlink us, to connect us to this idea of Passover, because what does Jesus say at Passover, the tie-in? That this is my body broken for you. This is my blood poured out for you. He's tying in. It's a story about bread. We're reading today. We're talking about, I know you guys are like, what, are we still talking about this? I don't think we are. But we are. We're talking about the story about bread. This miracle bread. And it ties everything in to how Jesus is the bread of life. There's a hyperlink again to John 6:35 and to 51, so we're sort of future hyperlinking. Jesus said to them, I am the bread of life. Whoever comes to me shall not hunger, and whoever believes in me shall never thirst. In 51, he says, I am the living bread that came down from heaven. If anyone eats of this bread, he will live forever, and the bread that I will give for the life of the world is my flesh. John has very skillfully crafted this all together here in this beginning story as we're looking at miracle bread. It's revealing that Jesus is the bread of life. And what's amazing is that this miracle bread, it's not going to fill these people forever. I mean, it filled them for sure, right? They ate enough that they had more left over. They gorged themselves, basically. I mean, they were like, yes, keep it coming. I'm so excited. It was like my son William, he's just learning how to eat like sort of solid stuff. And when he sees any type of bread, he's like, yes, sure. You know, and Joni's like digging it out of his mouth. And he's like, you know. I mean, these guys are just like, yes. But eventually, these people got hungry again. Because only Jesus is the one that can truly fill us. And I think this brings us to sort of something like an idea we should question is what are we hungering for? What are you hungering for? What sort of feels empty? Maybe intimacy? Maybe rest? Maybe finances? Maybe your health? Do you know I'm going to speak from a future self that even if you get all of that and are completely filled, you'll be lacking again soon. It's only Jesus, the true bread of life, that can fill that hunger. How amazing is that? That he freely gives himself. So Jesus is the better Moses. Jesus is the bread of life. And Jesus is the good shepherd. Jesus is the good shepherd. Verse 10 says this. Jesus said, have the people sit down. Now there is much grass in the place, so the man sat down, about 5,000 in number. Sometimes when we look at passages, we miss the little things, right? We focus on other stuff. Like when I look at this passage, majority of the time I'm trying to figure out, okay, was it 5,000? Was it 5,000 men? Were there women and children? If there was, how many would that be? That could be 10,000, 15,000. Some people think it would be up to 20,000. 20,000 people fit in one spot. What is going on? How do you even do that? Jesus' arms must have been so tired. Right? We get so distracted by all these other things that we sometimes forget an important little tiny detail like grass. Green grass. Not only does it time into the credibility timestamp, it's a detail that says, remember Passover, we talked about it just a couple minutes ago, saying here's a time frame, this happened, you guys, here's some details, so you know what's going on. But it's a hyperlink both forward and backwards. It's a hyperlink to when John quotes Jesus in John 10, where Jesus says, I am the good shepherd. If you were reading this through and you're reading this, you go, oh man, you know what Jesus said? He had people sit down in the grass. In the grass! What in the world? He is the good shepherd. Right? Is this link that John's doing here? And then he also goes back to the way past. He links it back to Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. Here in this spot, John has very carefully and skillfully revealed to us that Jesus is the good shepherd and he cares for his sheep. I mean, what? He was hurting. He was tired. He just lost his cousin, a partner in ministry. I mean, it was a brutal beheading. It was for sport and game. It was awful. And he sees this crowd of people, 5,000 plus people coming up the mountain. And they're probably there for political reasons. They're probably there, as they reveal, to force his hand to make a move, to say whether he stands on this side of the issue or this side of the issue. And what does he do? He has compassion and he shepherds them. He shepherds them. So amazing. He cares for his sheep. And this care leads Jesus to act in the way that he does in this passage. And we're going to look at three ways that this applies to us and to see what's going on here. And first, number one, this is our next fill-in. Jesus invites us to join what he is doing. Jesus invites us to join what he is doing. Jesus is moved by this crowd of people, and so he moves into action. And when God is working, he wants us to join in. It says in verse 6 that Jesus, he knows what he's going to do. He's about to do something and he knows what he's going to do. He's got a plan, right? But what does he do in verse 5? He invites his disciples in. And he does this to test them, for he himself knew what he would do. Now, we think about tests. Some of my EYGers are like, oh, tests. Tests are a way just to torture us. It's a way the teachers pick on us. No, a test, the purpose of a test, the true purpose of a test is to show what you know. It's not really to punish us. It's to reveal what you know. A good teacher uses a test not as punishment, but to find out what you know and to find out how to teach you better. To find out where you're lacking and then to say, you know what? We need to work on this. This is on me. I got to work on this. And this is exactly what Jesus does here. This is amazing. This is exactly what he does. He turns to Philip, right? This is the first one. He turns to Philip and he asks, he says, hey, where can we get some food around here? This is not a random question. Philip, if you don't know, Philip was a local boy in that area. He would actually know. So wisely, Jesus turns to Philip. He's like, hey, where can we get some food around here? Now, if you guys ever went to Twain Harte, California, it's a little town. It's about that big. There's literally more squirrels than there are people. Well, that's where I grew up. All right? And if you went up there, you guys would probably be like, hey, we should ask Billy what we should do. Like, what's a good places to eat, where we should go. I was a local boy. I know that type of stuff. It's smart to ask me that type of stuff. It'd be a little bit of a test because if I got it wrong, I'd be like, never going to trust that guy again. Yeah, that place closed down. I don't even know. No, so Jesus asked the local boy, and he's asking him a test, right? Philip has been with Jesus for about 2 years. He's seen miracle after miracle. He's seen people healed. He's sat under Jesus. He's heard his teaching. He's done some teaching himself. So Jesus asked him this test. How is he going to answer? I mean, as we read this is thick with tension. We should be like sitting on the edge of our seats. What's he going to say? Is he going to get it right? Is he going to get it wrong? What's going to happen? Oh my goodness. What does he do? Well, Philip gives a very practical answer. Amazingly, I think Philip was a pretty smart guy. Amazingly, he does some quick calculations. I'm not that smart. Just ask my wife. I'm not that smart. He looks at this crowd of 5,000 plus people, and he's like, oh, where are we going to get food? Carry the one. Okay, Jesus, even if we had 8 months of pay, there's no way we can do it. They won't even get like a small portion of it, right? He just figures that out. He basically says to Jesus, it's impossible. This is impossible. What you're asking is impossible. I don't even know why you're asking. Now, the second disciple that's mentioned, Andrew, Simon Peter's brother, I love this, is that the way that I read it, and I understand like it's a little bit through my eyes, but I feel like there's some hesitancy within Andrew. He sort of looks around and he sees what's available, which is awesome, and which is a great reminder for us. We should be doing that. When God's asking us to join us, where we should just look around and be like, all right, what do we got? Let's do it. But he's inviting Philip to join in. And he's inviting us to join in. And whenever we do, brings us to our second fill-in. Whenever we join in with him, Jesus multiplies whatever we have to offer. Jesus multiplies whatever we have to offer. And he does this with Andrew. It's so fascinating. Andrew looks around. He sees this little boy with his bag lunch, and it's 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. Now, I know that sounds extremely appetizing. But a barley loaf, we might think of a barley loaf, we think of like a loaf of bread. It's like, it's swelled up and kind of like barley loaf. It was bread for the poor person. It was not great tasting. It was flat. I think we got a picture of it like that. It was flat. It was like a pancake. It was round. The fish was more than likely dried and salted and was used as a relish on the bread. So you can imagine how bad the bread tasted. You wanted to put salty dried fish on it to make it taste better. I'll leave that for you. Maybe, you know what? Maybe we should go have some lunch together. So, no, okay, all right. So he looks around, he finds this bag lunch, and he hands it to Jesus, and he's like, okay, look, we have nasty tasting bread that tastes a little bit better with dried salted fish. And he adds this very practical caveat. I don't know if you catch it, but what are they for so many? The it's impossible is spreading. Jesus has given Philip and Andrew an opportunity to trust God in what he's doing. And he gives that to us constantly. Constantly, he's given us the opportunity to trust God instead of ourselves. I mean, God did in a moment in this miracle what he does every day with the oranges. Right? You plant a seed, an orange seed. After a couple of years, you've got a tree, and that tree is chock full of oranges. God does that all the time. This miracle he does in just a moment. To him, it's natural. To us, it's miraculous. I think sometimes we can suffer from a scarcity mindset. Right? We look at what we have. We see the things around us. We see a bag of fish and bread. and we have a scarcity mindset, which is basically that we don't think we have enough. And so because we don't think we have enough, instead of being willing to share it, instead of being willing to present it before God, we guard it. We think, it's not enough. It's you know what? That's not enough for everybody. I'm just going to hold on to that. The reality is we have enough. The reality is we've been given enough. The bigger reality is God. The bigger reality is that, I'm going to let you guys in on a secret. With God, it won't run out. God will never run out. He is the owner of a cattle on 1,000 hills. I mean, he made literally something out of nothing. Not too long before this, Jesus was at a wedding, and his mom says, Jesus, they're running out of wine, and it's going to be very shameful, basically. And he's like, all right, give me some big things of water. Bam! It's the best wine that's ever been made. What? I mean, come on. God won't run out. What an amazing thing. And brings us to our third fill-in, or third of this section. When we obey Jesus, we will see the miraculous. When we obey Jesus, we will see the miraculous. Again, this is sort of my view of this, but it feels like the disciples are a little reluctant to obey. There's like a bit of hesitation. I mean, I can actually imagine, Philip and Andrew, when Jesus says to him, he's like, okay, why don't you guys go have everybody sit down? Yeah. Did he not hear us? I don't know if he heard us. Should we say something again? I don't know, bro. Oh, no. Okay. Right? Like, I feel like there's like this reluctancy to obey. They're saying, I don't see how this is going to work. It's very practical, right? We said we don't have anything. We have not enough. It's almost insulting how much we have. Like, it would be insulting. Here you go. But the very practical idea is that they say, I don't see how this is going to work. Man. They obeyed Jesus, and miracles start happening. The first miracle, I think, in my opinion, is that 5,000 plus hangry individuals sat down together and hung out, and it wasn't like infighting or anything like that. I mean, when I get hungry, just ask my wife, I get cranky, but I do think like that is a miracle in itself. But what happens is Jesus takes the bread, he takes the fish, he thanks God, which is a great reminder for us. Whatever we have, whatever we've been given, whatever we have to offer, we should thank God for, right? And then he starts breaking it. He starts breaking it and breaking and passing out and breaking and breaking and breaking and keeps breaking this. 5 loaves and 2 fish. That's like crack, crack, done. Crack, crack, done. Crack, okay, we're done, right? It just keeps going and going and going. I mean, it says that they had as much as they wanted. You might think, and people argue this, that, it was like, okay, here's your crumb and here's your scale. Enjoy it. It's like super mini tacos or something like that. There we go, right? Like, this is not what's going on, right? When I was growing up, my mom would when my friends would come over, my mom would go and she would get us take and bake pizza. If you don't know what take and bake pizza is, it's amazing. You basically are given a cold pizza, you take it home, you bake it, it's fresh. It's like, this is amazing. It's super cheap. I love it. But we used to get all the time, right? And my mom would just give us tons. And you know what? It was never enough. As a teenage boy, it was never enough. We had like 100 of them, and we still, do we have more? It's never enough, but it says that they had as much as they wanted. God is so generous. He is so generous. There were leftovers. Of everyone there, Jesus knew how much a person would eat. They'd be like, all right, Pastor Jason, you're going to want exactly this much. Here you go. And you'd be like, all right, Kevin, you're going to have exactly this much. No. God's like, doesn't matter. You think you're done? Here, have some more. You think you want more? Great. Here, you're gonna stick it back behind you because you think you're not gonna have enough? It doesn't matter. Here, I want you to have this. God is amazingly generous. And they literally end with more than they started. What? What is going on? The disciples obeyed Jesus and they saw the miraculous. And when we obey Jesus, we will see the miraculous. Guys, we will see lives transformed. We'll see people healed. We'll see hearts of stone become hearts of blood and flesh. When we are willing to use whatever gifts God has given us. Maybe 5 loaves and 2 fish, which in a very practical sense is pretty worthless and unnecessary. That brings us to our final fill-in. My gift is not unnecessary. My gift is not unnecessary. Years back, Joni and I were leading a college ministry. And it was starting to pick up some steam. And we were talking about it, and we were hoping, we're like, you know what? I think it's time we really need to bring in some leaders to help this thing so it can grow and sustain itself. And man, I was praying and I was excited, and I tell you, I was like, I just need a couple like young, hip couples, right? Like that these college students will just be like, oh, just in awe of these couples that just whatever, they're young, they're hip, they're amazing. That's what I wanted. And as we prayed, you know what God gave us? God gave us, and this is how she describes herself, an old maid school teacher. An old maid school teacher. And I'm going to be honest with you. I was disappointed. I was like, seriously? What are you going to do with this, God? Man, oh man. God did amazing things. Absolutely astounding. In fact, God is still working through this woman. She is in her 70s. She is still volunteering with college students. She's volunteering with junior hires and high schoolers. She's volunteering at a school. She is killing it. She taught people how to cook. She opened her home for multiple people to stay, and she hates having people stay with her for extended periods of time. She just hates it. But it didn't matter. She helped people out through school. I mean, students come back years later as adults, and they are so excited to tell her what God is doing in their life because of her stepping in. Because I got out of my own way and listened to God. I would have missed out on seeing miracles, lives transformed. 2,000 plus years ago. Some rando kid with a lunch that his mom packed him because her gift was caring and providing. Helped feed 5,000 plus people. Is part of the only miracle that is found in all 4 Gospels. Guys, each of us have a bag, paper bag lunch. Moses say, I should have brought a bag up here. But each of us have this bag where our gifts are in it. Maybe your gift is friendship. Maybe it's finances. Maybe it's wisdom. Maybe it's hospitality. Maybe it's organization. Maybe, I don't know, it's speaking. Maybe it's just carrying. I don't know. But God wants to use that in an exceptionally mighty way. And so, this week, I want to challenge us to take some time to reflect on what these gifts are that you've been given. The things that you think may be useless, they're not. And to ask and to pray, where might God want to use you or your resources or your influence that He has given you here in Encounter and so many other places.